told you previously about a University of Nebraska-Lincoln multi-site study aimed at learning more about the use of cover crops. Nebraska Extension's Roger Elmore says researchers are now expanding that work to answer more questions about how cover crops might impact corn and soybean production systems. We talked with Roger earlier this week at UNL's Havelock Fields in the northeast section of Lincoln to get an update on some preliminary results.
We're doing, the Corn and Soybean Board came alongside us in 2014 to start our work on cover crops. 4 locations, 2 irrigated, 2 dryland, Concord and Meade are the 2 dryland locations. We're at Clay Center and Brule for the 2 irrigated locations. So Brule is almost to the panhandle out in western Nebraska, Clay Center in south central Nebraska. Their main interest in supporting our research was to see what is the impact of cover crops on corn and soybean yields? And can you produce a good set of cover crops which have various ecosystem values and contributions? Can you produce those cover crops without adversely affecting the yield of corn and soybean? That was the main heart of what we were trying to do.
What factors all went into your research then?
Well, we were thinking about both corn and soybean systems. So we're in continuous corn and we're in corn soybean systems at each of the 4 locations. So there are 3 sets of blocks. And within those we have 2 planting dates. You know, what happens if you seed cover crops into standing corn or soybeans? So we're going in late August, early September and broadcasting seed, simulating an aerial broadcast of cover crops. One during the growing season, and then one right immediately after harvest. The one after harvest we're actually drilling.
What do the preliminary results show for what it means about the timing of getting a cover crop into a field?
It varies. You know, that there are times, I think the 2014 data showed that we get better stands with broadcasting seed in the season. It gives you about another month of growing season for the cover crops. Some of the Clay Center location last year actually showed that we did better when we drilled it after harvest. So it's got to be a soil moisture deal that is changing that. We lost a month of growing season for the cover crop, but we gained enough moisture that it was an advantage to wait. In terms of corn and soybean yields, most of them showed no difference at all. We've seen a couple places where we've reduced corn or soybean yields a little bit. So there is a trade-off on that. We have been successful in producing some degree of cover crop in some of the treatments, but not all of them. A lot of the treatments, the cover crops just don't do very well.
That moisture topic has to be of concern. What have you learned about the moisture that it takes or might take away from the crop?
Well, in 2015, it wasn't a big deal in terms of going, the material we planted in 14 going into 15. It affected yields, like I said, at one location in one of the cropping systems. I think it was about 10 bushels on corn we lost, which is pretty minor compared to everything else that was going on that was showing no difference. This year, we have a dry spring. People have been out soil sampling in our plots this year, and there's going to be a significant difference with a cover crop that's producing some biomass like it is. It's using water, it's drying the soil out. If we don't get significant rain, before planting or early in the season, it may impact yields on corn and soybean both.
Let's talk about this field here in Havelock in Lincoln that's become, as you said, kind of a spin-off to the initial research. Tell me what you're doing and what you're trying to learn.
This situation, the idea, the Corn and Soybean Board allowed us to get started in thinking about cover crops, and you find this whole thousands of questions that revolve around it. One is we're trying to study here and at Clay Center here at Havelock, and that deals with, we have 5 different planting dates of cover crops here and 5 different species into corn at various times, starting at planting of corn. So some people are planting cover crops at the same time as corn. We're coming in at V6 to V7 on corn and doing the same thing, and then later in the season for 3 other planting dates.
Is there any initial conclusion to draw?
Yeah, if you plant a good stand of cover crop with corn at the time of corn seeding, corn yields are going to be sacrificed. There's no question about that.
By how much?
Considerable. It would not, if you're looking for improving corn yields, I can't remember the exact number. I think we're talking 30 to 40 bushels of corn versus 200 and plus.
Is there a noticeable benefit to the cover crop, however?
It is if you want some of that early season grazing. But if you're looking for fall grazing, that was not the way to get to it. These kinds of systems are better if you seed later in the summer, if you're looking for fall or spring grazing.
So where do you go from here, Roger?
We continue study. We've got a study looking at changing corn and soybean varieties, different maturities, to see if we can get out of the field earlier without sacrificing corn and soybean yield significantly, but allowing us to get more time for cover crop establishment and fall growth. If you're into cattle, cover crops, you're willing to take some of those trade-offs with corn and soybean yields.
The Crop Watch website has a specific section dedicated to the use of cover crops. We'll link to that site on our homepage if you're interested in learning more.